Maverick News presents The Rick Walker Show. Defrag your mind.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Rick Walker. Welcome back to the Maverick News Channel. Hello, Maverick family. Great to have everybody here tonight. The standoff between freedom fighters, Axe the Tax protesters, whatever you want to call them, continues out in Alberta. The standoff between them and police. It's been going on all day. We'll take you to the Trans-Canada Highway near Highway 22 and a truck stop out there where this whole saga has been developing through the day. We'll also talk about RFK Jr. saying that Joe Biden is the biggest threat to democracy, not Donald Trump. We'll get a comment from Donald Trump about deporting people. We'll update the situation in Ukraine. There's been a drone attack out there. We're not in Ukraine. Ukraine has launched a drone attack against Russia. All this while the leader of Belarus prepares for war. We also have Zelensky talking about justice for Ukraine, as a whole conference in the Netherlands is devoted to that very subject, and restoring people's property in Ukraine is front and center. Compensation for war damages. They're talking about that, but the war isn't over yet, so I would say there is a lot more damage probably to come. And Joe Biden sniffing babies. We'll talk about that too, because that is making international news today as well. So we have all that and a whole lot more coming up right here on the Maverick News Channel. Stay with us. We'll head out to Alberta on the other side of this.
Maverick News. The world is watching.
So our lead story tonight, a standoff between police and protesters out in Alberta on the Trans-Canada Highway at Highway 22. We have, it's hard to tell exactly how many people there. They rolled in yesterday, of course, for the first day of the Axe the Tax protest. We saw them blocking one lane of the highway yesterday, keeping one lane open. Police monitoring the situation there all day yesterday. Then last night I started receiving messages from people out there saying that police had moved in reinforcements. 17 vehicles. Some people describe them as SWAT vehicles. They're not really SWAT vehicles at all. They were SUVs. So they roll in with more officers. I'm getting messages from sources out there saying that they're moving in and they're going to forcibly remove the protesters who had moved off the highway over to a service road that runs adjacent to the Trans-Canada Highway. Police did take up position in the area, but they did not require the protesters to leave overnight. However, this morning, what police did is they started to march officers in, and they formed a line in a ditch along the side of the highway, between the highway and the protesters who were still parked and still remain on the service road off the actual Trans-Canada. That barrier, that human barrier of officers, has remained in place all day. They are not letting the protesters get back onto the highway. They're preventing that from happening. Liaison officers are there. They are speaking to a couple of the key people, Ron Clark and Freedom George. They say they're not organizers, but the liaison officers are speaking to them. And they have been told that as long as they stay on the service side of the ditch, everything should be okay. They can continue to stay there, at least for the moment. A lot of speculation, a lot of suggestions, predictions that police are going to become aggressive or something at some point and force these protesters to move. So about every half hour, they have a shift change. They march new officers in, so the officers who have formed the line can then march out, and they go over to the Petro-Canada service station truck stop, which is right there at that location, and then they take a break, and this all continues. It's been going on like that all day. It started early this morning. We did bring you coverage of that, and I jumped on and provided some news updates early this morning, and then heading into this afternoon. So we have been trying to keep people up to date on the story, and there really hasn't been much new on this story. It's just been routine through the day. This is what it looks like during a shift change out there on the Trans-Canada for police.
New staff coming through. Shift change. Left, 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 right, left. Oh, we like the other crew better. The other guys are cooler than you. We got some serious coppers out here. We are holding the line. We are holding the line, guys. I'm just making a recording here, so I got this one on my phone. It's not alive, but I'll upload it. They got those rubber bullets in their guns there. Maybe beanbag guns, probably rubber bullets. Off the highway! Get off the highway, that's dangerous! Left, 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 right, left. We can't walk on the highway, you should be either. Well, these guys here that are, well, look at how many of them counted, guys. I'm moving it as slow as I can. All the ones walking there, they're leaving. And the new ones just come in. The new ones just come in. I'm gonna try to keep this under 2 minutes. So we're holding the line down here. We're not leaving. This wasn't a one-day event. We told you guys. Let's go. Let's go. Let's go.
So that's what's been going on down there all day. Just every half hour, a shift change like that. Then the new officers come in. They stand there in the ditch. They stare at the protesters. The protesters stare back and they chant, and it just goes on back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. And it just goes on like this. A little more footage for you. There we go.
Hello, everyone. Let's see how long we can keep the sound for. Not much has changed, except we have some on the other side of the road now. So now we have a group on the other side of the road, and then we still have these guys here. They switch out every half hour. So we're still here. We'll see how long they keep the sound from. How's it going?
I follow you a lot, man.
Oh, well, thank you. But we're still here. I'll take you guys for a walk.
Okay, and we're gonna go live out there now again. We have some new developments out there. Here we go. Looks like something has changed on the highway.
Lots together. Us together.
Okay, so this is live.
Hello, everyone. We'll let some people join us here, and we'll let you know what just transpired. You'll notice something different here. Hello, Deborah. Hello, Sue. And yes, Facebook is playing around. They took my last video down because they don't want you guys seeing this stuff. But with all the amazing people sharing stuff everywhere, things work out. But we'll just get a few people on here and we'll show you guys what's going on. I'll show you this side. Now let's follow the ditch. You guys ready? Oh, they all left. They all left. They are no longer here. It's like an understanding that we're not going anywhere, and the longer that they stay here, the bigger the crowds are going. So we're still holding it. We're not going anywhere. But all the police that were guarding the ditch is gone. So we're still going to hang out here. And yes, if we go to that road, they will all be back. But right now, they are not here. So it's actually pretty good. It is awesome. It's what happens when we have power of prayer and when the people come together. We can accomplish a lot of things. And it probably wasn't good for public viewing to have them standing there because it didn't look good. But we have our area back. It's a beautiful day. So we're going to continue staying here. We're going to continue protesting. And we're going to continue doing what we always do. Is get the word out to the public. And let's remove this carbon tax. I'm hearing, I don't know the truth yet, this is just rumors, that the Quebec police are on strike. So I don't know what truth there is to that, guys, but... Jay, why are we not at the border? Holy! Uh-oh. I'll have to... He's gonna lasso a hippo. Oh, he missed it. So why aren't we at the border? Well, if we continue down this road past Canmore, then you have to get a pass for the park, and then you become in a national park. And the national park belongs to the federal government, so we are staying in provincial areas. So we start with the provincial level. That is why we're not at the border. Because if we were at the BC-Alberta border, it would put us right in the national park. So, and for all the ones that are just joining, they're gone. They are no longer here. We do have a few police, but they're talking to us and they're smiling and, you know, they're just chatting with us. So, other than that is our good news for now. We got our ditch back. So, that is the quick update, guys. Share that out. And we're still going to be here. We're not leaving. So, we are here for the night again. Tomorrow's another day. And we're going to continue doing what we're doing today. So, love each and every one of you guys.
Okay, so they didn't make them leave. They've left them continue their protest. They're on the service road. They're not on the highway. So the cops left. And there you go. So they'll stay there tonight and continue to wave the flags, and we'll see what happens. All of that going on against the backdrop of politics. So today, Trudeau announced another element of his housing plan. He's, what are we talking about here? $6 billion for federal housing. But while at this news conference to talk about that, he was questioned about the protest and the carbon tax, of course, because the carbon tax is the focus of the now 2-day nationwide protest, although really this protest out in Alberta is, I think, really mainly the place where we have activity. I've not really seen much of size going on anywhere else in the country, just pockets of protest here and there. Yesterday was a bigger day. We had quite a bit of activity in Ottawa, some here, some in Windsor that I saw, some other locations as well, some in some major cities across the country, some out in BC. Here's Trudeau now on the issue of the carbon tax and the protests.
Bacon from all Nova Scotia, Prime Minister. You have challenged the premiers to come up with an alternative to the carbon tax, and Premier Houston filed a plan last week. I'm wondering, is any alternative that does not include a price on carbon automatically a non-starter?
The Pan-Canadian framework to fight climate change, which was agreed to in 2016, laid out both measures to put a price on pollution across the country and recognized a federal backstop in situations where the provinces did not or didn't want to come up with their own plan. The federal plan puts a price on pollution that brings down emissions and it spurs innovation and the kind of investments in emissions reduction that we need, while at the same time putting more money in the pockets of Canadians. The Parliamentary Budget Officer estimates that 8 out of 10 families make more money with the price on pollution quarterly checks, the next one which is going out on April 15th, than they pay with the price on pollution. But from the very beginning, we said this is a federal backstop, and various provinces have put forward plans over time to try and meet that federal backstop. Indeed, Quebec and British Columbia have their own pricing systems that match the ambition of the federal plan, so they go ahead with their own. Other provinces can design a price on pollution that meets that federal level. We're always there to work with them. I have worked with Premier Houston in the past on some various attempts that he made to make that level, but there needs to be fairness across the country. There needs to be rigor. Canadians, particularly here in Atlantic Canada, where the impacts of hurricanes, of extreme weather events are all too well known, we need to step up in the fight against climate change, and we will be there to make sure we're taking it seriously right across the country. But like I said, any province has been welcome for years now to put forward a plan that meets the federal targets.
The argument in some quarters is the whole point is to reduce emissions. If provinces can find a way of doing that without a carbon tax, why not?
The Supreme Court weighed in on that just last year and said that the federal government has the right and the responsibility even to fight against climate change on a national level. With the Supreme Court judgment, it is clear that there needs to be a price on pollution right across the country. Any jurisdiction can develop a sufficiently stringent and rigorous plan that meets the federal benchmark, and we will gladly let them do it. But for now, the federal plan that puts more money in the pockets of Canadians and fights climate change extremely efficiently is what's going to be in place.
Next question.
Thank you. Yeah, Preston Mulligan from CBC News in Nova Scotia. My question is about investigating the killings in Israel. You've been satisfied with the Israeli.
We'll just pause that there. Did you hear the heckling in the background? At times it was so loud it actually drowned JT out today during this announcement. Listen to this. Hang on just a second here. Listen to this. This guy can't get a break anymore. Here's the audio.
In particular, it's really important to understand the context around immigration. Every year we bring in about 450, now close to 500,000 permanent residents a year. And that is part of the necessary growth of Canada. It benefits our citizens, our communities, it benefits our economy. These are the levels that we have stabilized and grown steadily over the past years, because that's what Canada needs to continue to have a strong economy and strong communities. However, over the past few years, we've seen a massive spike in temporary immigration, whether it's temporary foreign workers or whether it's international students in particular that have grown at a rate far beyond what Canada has been able to absorb. To give an example, in 2017, 2% of Canada's
Are you getting this?
was made up of temporary immigrants. Now we're at 7.5% of our population comprised of temporary immigrants.
I'd say JT is beyond his best before date. He's up against a lot, man, because he's just not very popular anymore. There was a time when the media was swooning over him, and all they wanted to talk about was his hair and his socks. And now everywhere he goes, he's heckled. Now, the one thing I honestly have a little bit of trouble wrapping my head around here today is the focus of the protest out on the Trans-Canada. I've heard people asking for a variety of things. I know that they're talking about the carbon tax, but that's a federal thing. It took effect on Monday. It added 3 cents to a liter of gasoline at the pumps. A lot more to come between now and 2030. 60 cents in total, as I understand it, between now and then. And then, of course, there are, there's the carbon tax on other fuels as well, whether it's natural gas, oil, whatever, diesel fuel, all carbon fuels, which will add to the cost of everything because it will take more money to harvest food, transport goods to market, but the gasoline and the diesel fuel and the trucks and the cars to deliver everything to market, to the stores. So it's going to add to inflation for sure. But today, some of the protesters were demanding a meeting with Danielle Smith and started to blame Danielle Smith, the Premier of Alberta, for the carbon tax, which, they were saying Danielle Smith should be down here with us. And I thought, well, man, the focus of this thing is shifting. I don't quite understand it. But this is a post from Danielle Smith on X, formerly known as Twitter. Today, she's opposed to the carbon tax too. It says the carbon tax is a shell game used to tax and to transfer money to areas where the Prime Minister needs more votes. It does not help the environment or reduce emissions. And then she puts the graphic up as part of her post to illustrate the cost of the carbon tax. But some of these protesters started to, just in the course of watching the live footage coming out of there, started to attack her. Whatever, man. Okay. But today, she was part of a news conference dealing with mental health issues, healthcare, and of course, this during the question portion of the news conference, of course, the protests across the country, the one that we're seeing today on the Trans-Canada and the carbon tax issue came up. And here's what she had to say about this. Here we go.
Hi there, Terry from CTV. I have a question first about the protests that are still going on Highway 1. According to Cochrane RCMP, disruptions are expected to continue today. Is the province at all considering using the Critical Infrastructure Defense Act? And is there any direction being given to the protesters to move where they don't constrict some of these economic corridors?
Well, look, let me give that direction. I don't support it when Extinction Rebellion glues themselves to the street and stops traffic, and I don't support anyone stopping traffic as well. You can protest, do it at the side of the road. Don't interfere with the movement of goods. Don't interfere with the movement of your neighbors. It's the reason why we have the Critical Infrastructure Act, and I would just ask people to be compliant with the law.
And do you have any comment on the video that's circulating from 2021 where you're talking about the carbon tax rebates leaving you better off financially, I believe with the Fraser Institute, and why, you are a vocal opponent of the carbon tax, kind of where that message shift and why different now?
Well, I think if I can recall the context, although I'm a bit fuzzy on it, I think I may have been comparing it with the NDP carbon tax and how it was administered versus the way Justin Trudeau administered the carbon tax. So you may recall the NDP, when they brought in their carbon tax, they collected it centrally and only gave a third back to Albertans and only gave it to the lowest income Albertans. And then they took the remaining 2/3 into government revenue. And so by comparison, having the federal government take the carbon tax in and return a portion to some Albertans is preferable to the model that the NDP had, but people are still not better off. 2021, you have to recall, we were still in lockdown. We're not in lockdown anymore. So I would imagine that most people would have a different experience today, and the taxes continue to go up. year after year. And so the amount that people are paying is still going up. So when I look at the parliamentary budget officer, I mean, it's their own data that shows that the very low income individuals may be getting back more than they pay in. But as you go up the income scale, you're paying more and more and more. $911 on average this year, and up to, I believe, $2,300 by 2030. In addition, it's immoral to be putting the carbon tax on home heating. We especially at the level that it's at now. I mean, it's one thing for it to be irritating and harmful, because 35 cents of every $1.50 fill is what they're charging at the federal level. But on home heating, the federal government is now going to be charging $4.09 on the carbon tax, and the gas only costs $1.72. So I don't know on what planet anyone thinks that charging 2.5 times on a carbon tax with the base price of fuel is, especially in a cold climate like ours, makes any sense. But there's no metric, there's no rebate that is going to compensate for that. They should completely take the tax off, in my opinion. But barring that, they should at least stop increasing it. And I'll just quote Andrew Furey, because like, he is a liberal premier from Newfoundland and Labrador, and he wrote a letter out calling for an emergency meeting, which we also support, saying that there isn't a solution to the guy who's loading up his fishing gear into his truck and taking it down to the dock to do a day's work. You can't just get an electric car. You can't just get a hydrogen car. The options aren't available, and they won't be available for some time until we build out the infrastructure. And so it's just punishing people, and they're frustrated by it because there's no way for them to practically be able to avoid the cost. That's the reason why it should come off now. There are other ways for us to be able to achieve the outcomes that the federal government wants to achieve. The carbon tax has been tried, it's failed, it's punitive, people don't like it, especially in the middle of an affordability crisis. It's got to go.
Thank you. We're going to have to go over to the phones here to get through some questions.
Question here.
And then we'll
Carolyn
just come back.
Vogel, I just want to follow up on that.
Sure.
What would you say now to the 343 economists that are now saying that the carbon tax is the most effective and least costly way to reduce emissions?
I think they should read economist Ross McKittrick's column that appeared in the last couple of days, where in the absence of any other policy, a carbon tax, in theory, might be the most efficient, but that's not what we have. We have clean fuel standards. We have a proposed emissions cap. We have a proposed fertilizer cap. We have a proposed methane cap. We have a proposed plan to phase out vehicles. We have a proposed plan to be net zero on our power grid. Like, when you start layering all those things, we've got industrial pricing schemes. We've got cap and trade in Quebec. So in the theoretical model, where the only choice you have is one, then I suppose that might make sense. But in the real world, where we are layering one type of policy on top of another, it's not effective, especially since the options aren't available. They don't exist. There isn't the ability to turn over in Alberta, where almost 100% of our businesses and 100% of our homeowners are on natural gas. There isn't the ability to overnight switch to something else. Doesn't matter how high you put the tax up, it's just going to be an extra tax. There isn't the ability to overnight have everybody purchase an electric vehicle and upgrade our electrical grid so 100% of people can be on electric vehicle. It can't happen. So we're at a point now where people understand that we want to move towards emissions reduction, but then let's start working on the things that we need to do to build out the options for consumers. In the meantime, it's just punishment. People see it, they know they can't avoid it, they know that it's an extra tax, they know it's hurting them, and they don't want it.
And so people are waking up and dealing with the realities of the electrification of the auto industry. Not enough infrastructure. People don't want these electric cars. They're being punished at the pump now just for driving a gasoline-powered vehicle. 3 cents per liter tacked on April 1st, 60 cents per liter added by 2030, incrementally increasing every year between now and then. A similar thing is happening in the United States and all around the world, but mostly in Western countries, as governments really push this issue. Pierre Poilievre, also supporting an emergency meeting between Justin Trudeau and the premiers of Canada, and posting this in response to everything going on today. He says, breaking. RBC reports today that it now takes a record-smashing 63.5% of median household pre-tax income to make payments on a typical home. But don't worry, he says, the guys who made it happen, Trudeau and Fraser, had another photo up today. It announced yet another program. And what he's talking about here is the housing program. And the $6 billion that they're going to dump of federal money into that. But with the level of immigration, it appears even these measures will be inadequate to deal with the increasing demand for housing, which continues to push prices up, more than doubling the cost of housing since Justin Trudeau took office, putting houses potentially out of reach for an entire generation, killing the Canadian dream for many. Can it be fixed? I would suggest that it can be, but it will take political will and definitely a change in political leadership. As I said, I think Justin Trudeau's best before date has passed. We'll be right back.
Maverick News. The world is watching. Greetings, brave Mavericks. Our quest for truth continues. We go beyond fake news. Together we expose propaganda. Together we pull others out of rabbit holes. We are maverick thinkers. We are all unique individuals, defenders of individual rights and freedoms, credible, trusted, grounded in reality. Maverick News, Maverick News. Defending free speech, free speech. Donate at freedomreporters.com. Do it now. Tomorrow may be too late. Maverick News. The world is watching.
Relations between China, the United States, Canada could be better, I would say. Well, today, President Biden and Xi Jinping shared a phone call and discussed the war in Ukraine, the situation internationally between the U.S. and China. They addressed U.S. concerns over China's trade with Russia, the issues of cyber attacks and election interference, and efforts to counter illicit narcotics traffic. Fentanyl. We know that's a huge issue, a deadly issue in the United States, and we have seen all kinds of evidence that the drugs flow from China into Mexico, where they are processed prepared and then smuggled over the U.S.-Mexico border into the United States. That seems to be the path for the U.S. So they were just calling this a check-in call between Biden and Xi. It's their first discussion, their first call since last November. And obviously, there's intense competition between the United States and China. You're seeing China and Russia grow closer together. The United States, I think, responsible really for pushing Russia into the arms of China. The United States, Canada, so very dependent at this point on China, as it has emerged as really one of the world's great powers from being, when I was much younger, really a developing country, almost a third world country in most respects. Now an economic powerhouse rivaling the United States. So there was this call, and then today let's go to the White House, where Admiral John Kirby brings us up to date on what that call was all about. Here we go. He'll talk about the call and what's going on in the Middle East.
Good afternoon, everybody. As you all know, President Biden spoke by phone today with President Xi Jingping of the People's Republic of China. The purpose of the call was to build on the two leaders' meeting in Woodside, California back in November of last year. Over the course of about an hour and 45 minutes, the two leaders held a candid and constructive discussion on a range of bilateral, regional, and global issues, including areas of cooperation and areas of differences. They encouraged continued progress on issues discussed at the Woodside Summit, including counter-narcotics, cooperation, ongoing military-to-military communications, talks to address artificial intelligence-related risks, and continuing efforts on climate change and people-to-people exchanges. President Biden also emphasized the importance of maintaining peace and stability across the Taiwan Strait, and he reaffirmed the importance of the rule of law and freedom of navigation in the South China Sea. He raised concerns over the PRC's support for Russia's defense industrial base and its impact on European and transatlantic security. And he emphasized that the the U.S.'s enduring commitment to the complete denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula. President Biden also raised continued concerns about the PRC's unfair trade policies and non-market economic practices, which harm American workers and families. President Biden also emphasized that the United States will continue to take necessary action to prevent advanced U.S. technologies from being used to undermine our national security without unduly limiting trade and investment. The president also repeated his call for China to release U.S. citizens who are wrongfully detained or under exit bans. We believe that there is no substitute for regular communication at the leader level to effectively manage this complex and often tense bilateral relationship. Both presidents agreed to pick up the phone and speak when needed. Following the leaders' call, we will continue to advance our interests through cabinet-level diplomacy, including visits to China by Secretary of the Treasury Yellen and incoming days, and by Secretary Blinken in incoming weeks. Now, if I could just, as Karine noted, just turn briefly to events in the Middle East. We were outraged to learn of an IDF strike that killed a number of civilian humanitarian workers yesterday from the World Central Kitchen, which has been relentless in working to get food to those who are hungry in Gaza and, quite frankly, around the world. We send our deepest condolences to their families and loved ones. We've seen the comments from Prime Minister Netanyahu and from the Israeli Defense Forces about their commitment to conduct an investigation. As we understand it, a preliminary investigation has been completed today and presented to the Army Chief of Staff, and we'll obviously look to see what they discover in this preliminary one. But we expect a broader investigation to be conducted and to be done so in a swift and comprehensive manner. We hope that those findings will be made public and that there is appropriate accountability held. More than 200 aid workers have been killed in this conflict, making it one of the worst for aid workers in recent history. This incident is emblematic of a larger problem and evidence of why distribution of aid in Gaza has been so challenging. But beyond the strike, what is clear is that the IDF must do much more to improve deconfliction processes so that civilians and humanitarian aid workers are protected. The U.S. will continue to press Israel to do more as well to ensure the safety of humanitarian workers, and will continue to do all we can to deliver this assistance to Palestinian civilians in Gaza. Thank you.
Thanks. John, do you have any worries regarding Israel and Gaza about the floating dock, and how can aid workers be protected?
Worries? What do you mean by worries?
Concerns about its status, viability?
Well, I mean, let me break that up a couple of ways. I mean, obviously the temporary pier, it's known as a JLOT, it's Joint Logistics Over the Shore. It's on its way to the Eastern Mediterranean right now. Hasn't arrived yet, and it'll take some time once it gets there to be assembled and to achieve what we call interim operating capability. We expect that will happen in coming weeks. There's no concern in terms of our ability and the skills needed to build it and to get it up and running. What we are working with partners in the region are two things. One is the logistics flow, getting the maritime materials to the pier, and then working with the Israelis in particular about how that pier is protected and secured, and how the aid, the material, gets from the pier into Gaza and further distributed. Those modalities are still being worked out.
Do recent events like the strike you referenced raise additional...
Oh, believe me, we're under no illusion about the fact that Gaza is a war zone. And force protection of our troops, which will not be entering Gaza, will be first and foremost in the president's mind, as well as our military leaders, to make sure that they can operate that pier, assemble it and operate it in a safe way. But believe me, we're well aware. Gaza is a war zone. In fact, that it is a war zone is, again, what makes it so challenging to get the humanitarian aid to people in need.
Mm-hmm. Thanks. John, you said that the White House is outraged by the strike that killed these World Central Kitchen workers. Has the White House already conveyed that outrage to anyone in the Israeli government, and what was their response?
Well, I won't speak for the Israelis. We've been very clear about our feelings over this particular strike and our expectations of the Israelis.
Have they provided, or has the Pentagon been able to gain any understanding of what happened here yet? I know it's early, but it sounds, based on what Jose Andres has said, that these workers were doing everything right. Their vehicle was marked, they were in a safe zone.
Yeah.
What more could they have done?
Yeah, it's really, it's devastating to see these images and to hear these early reports about the steps that they tried to take to protect themselves. But the Israelis, look, they've already said this was on them, and they're doing this investigation. We obviously want to make sure that investigation gets completed and is as transparent as possible. And as I said in my opening statement, that there's accountability to be held here.
One quick question on China. What was the president's message to the president when it comes to Chinese misinformation campaigns, or any effort by the Chinese government or people associated with the Chinese government to interfere with the 2024 election?
I would just say that we've been clear consistently, even going back to the November meeting in California, about our concerns over our own election security and efforts by certain actors, including some from the PRC, to affect that.
So there was no new message in this conversation?
I don't have a new message to read out to you today.
Okay. So while that's going on, we saw the former Taiwan President Ma meet with Chinese officials to try to improve relations and promote cross-strait peace. Here's just a short piece of video illustrating that. This is what it looked like today. That's the director of China's Taiwan Affairs Office. And that part of the world very much in a state of flux. We know that defense spending, if approved by the United States, will has a portion of that, a large portion of it, earmarked for the area around Taiwan, not just Ukraine. And just taking a look at everything going on there, we're talking about cybersecurity, right? And China. That's obviously an area of real concern here in Canada, as well as we've seen many intelligence reports suggesting that China has managed to exert some real influence politically here in Canada in ways that are of extreme concern. And one of those concerns, of course, is election integrity. RFK Jr. in a CNN interview surprisingly said, well, it surprised some, but he says that it's actually Joe Biden that represents the biggest threat to democracy, not Donald Trump. I would say, yes, this clip did raise my eyebrows a little bit, just the way that he addressed this question. Check this out. Hang on.
Reason for that is President Biden is a much worse threat to democracy. And the reason for that is President Biden is the first candidate in history, the first president in history that has used the federal agencies to censor political speech, so to censor his opponent. I can say that because I just won a case in the Federal Court of Appeals and now before the Supreme Court. It shows that he started censoring not just me. For 37 hours after he took the oath of office, he was censoring me. No president in the country has ever done that. The greatest threat to democracy is not somebody who questions election returns, but a president of the United States who used the power of his office to force the social media companies, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, to open a portal and give access to that portal to the FBI, to the CIA, to the IRS, to CISA, to NIH, to censor his political critics. President Biden, for the first president in history, to use his power over the Secret Service to deny Secret Service protection to one of his political opponents for political reasons. He's weaponizing the federal agencies. Those are really critical threats to democracy.
Donald Trump, of course, tried to overturn a free and fair election. He tried to overturn one, right? He's still fighting in court.
Yes.
How is that not a threat to democracy?
Well, I think that is a threat to democracy. If him trying to overthrow the election clearly is a threat to democracy. But the question was, who is a worse threat to democracy? And what I would say is, I'm not going to answer that question, but I can argue that President Biden is, because the First Amendment, Aaron, is the most important. Adams and Hamilton and Madison said, we put the guarantee of freedom of expression in the First Amendment because all of our other constitutional rights depend on it. If you have a government that can silence its opponent, it has license for any atrocity.
So just to be clear, you're saying you could make an argument that President Biden is a worse threat to democracy than Donald Trump. That's what you just said.
But who else has ever tried to send, what president in history has ever tried to censor political opponents? What president has weaponized the federal agency? When my father came into the Justice Department, the first week he was there, he got all of the branch and division attorneys together, and he said, whatever we do, we are not going to use the power of the Justice Department for political reasons.
Trump, of course, has said that he would do that. He has said that he would do that.
Of course, and that is reprehensible.
And he is the only president who's tried to overthrow the results of an election.
Well, let me say something about that. I'm not going to defend President Trump on that. That was appalling.
Interesting. His comments, too, on J6. Soft language in a way that sort of he's acknowledging the interviewer and agreeing, but not being so hard on it that he's giving the media sound bites on that issue that can be used in a way that would be detrimental to his campaign. Very interesting and skillful, I would say. and sort of raised my eyebrows there, especially just specifically on that J6 comment. Not so surprised him saying that Biden is a greater threat to democracy. I totally understand the logic behind that. The censorship issue, even if you have, say, a candidate that on the issue of foreign policy maybe is diametrically opposed to what we're getting from the Biden administration, where maybe Russia would be in a better position to, I don't know, face less opposition from the United States. I think that would bring us peace. I think that's certain, and in a way, maybe that makes the country more secure in overall. You could argue that as well, but that sort of nuance, if you're saying that Trump is a greater threat to democracy because of his positions on matters of foreign policy versus what Biden is doing, which is to undermine constitutional rights, violate people's rights through censorship and violating their privacy, that's totally more serious, I think, than just having a disagreement on foreign policy. Here's Trump on immigration. This statement new, saying that we're going to see that the first day in office, he will effect deportations.
On day one, I will seal the border and will begin the largest domestic deportation operation in the history of our country. And if other countries say they won't take them back, we're not going to take them back, I will say that, yeah, here they come. You're just going to hold on to your britches, because here they come. They're coming back.
So that has been enough to trigger some progressives, for sure. There's been quite a bit of pushback online over that. Not surprising. Let's take a brief break here, and we'll come back on the other side and continue with today's top news stories. Don't go away.
Maverick News. The world is watching.
The New World Order. Government overreach. The Great Reset. Mainstream media lies. Now more than ever, independent voices are needed. Donate now at freedomreporters.com. That's freedomreporters.com. Maverick News. The antivirus program for your mind.
Okay, so still sticking with politics, what we have been seeing today is a conference in the Netherlands. This one focused on restoring justice for Ukraine. That was the name of the conference. The idea here was to really talk about the damage that has been done to Ukraine during the war, the suffering that the people of Ukraine have been enduring, what might be done, what can be done, what will be done to address those damages, and people are being encouraged to register damages now, with the idea being that by registering, then they can be made whole, or at least compensated to some degree through some programs to help them rebuild after the war. This, of course, coming at a time when the war really is not over. The fighting continues, the destruction continues. This conference happening in the Netherlands, but the subject matter really was not restricted to restoration of damages. It went beyond that, with first the King of Netherlands addressing the conference in a greeting and sort of laying out the premise for this conference, and then afterwards Zelensky is going to be given an opportunity here to speak as well. Here's the King of Netherlands setting the tone.
We all believe firmly in the rule-based international order, and we stand united in our defense of right over might. Human rights, freedom, and peace are the cornerstones of the world order we seek to build. And it's crystal clear that there can be no lasting peace without justice. It is unacceptable for perpetrators of international crimes to escape their punishment. Those responsible for the crimes committed against Ukraine and its people must be held to account. Therefore, it's of great importance that you are participating in this conference, focusing on restoring justice for Ukraine. On behalf of the Kingdom of the Netherlands, I welcome you all most warmly. Our hearts go out to the Ukrainian people who have been withstanding Russia's aggression for so long. Russia's war in Ukraine is an outrage, not only to the victims, but also to the values that we all stand for. It is an assault on everything that we hold dear. By attending this conference, you are sending the people of Ukraine a message of hope. You are expressing that they're not alone, that we, as an international community, are on their side, now and in the future. Together, we've been laying the groundwork that is needed to hold the perpetrators accountable for their actions. The establishment of the International Center for the Prosecution of Crime of Aggression and of the Register of Damage for Ukraine are just two examples. But there's still a lot of work to do.
Interesting.
You will be building on solid foundations which have been laid. We will stand with Ukraine for as long as it takes. Our aim is to restore justice. Our goal is to bring peace to Ukraine. United, we are strong. I wish you all a most productive conference.
Very interesting. Two totally different narratives, one from the Russian side, one from this side. Now, let's go to see what Zelensky had to say. He's addressing them by video as well.
Dear friends, thank you for your unchanging faith in justice. Justice is the very line from which the movement towards secure peace may begin. Weapons give physical protection, but it is justice that restores the sense of security to life that was protected with the strength of weapons. And justice also brings back the sense of predictability to all local relations. Every potential aggressor should know what awaits him if he ruins peace. It is justice that can ensure this. 2 days ago I was in Bucha, in a city that became a symbol of Russian evil for the entire war. All of you remember how the streets of Bucha looked like when Russian occupiers were thrown out from the air. You remember how many bodies of murdered people were there and how it all happened. You remember what was revealed when we began to discover the mass burials of tortured Ukrainians. 2 years have passed since then, and even until now we have not yet identified the names of everyone killed by Russian soldiers. There are still unknown graves in Bucha. It is the same in many other our communities liberated from Russian occupation. Although various cities and villages are regularly being restored, each of them has a specific feeling, the same for all of them, a feeling that there is still a lot of work ahead. The work precisely for the sake of justice, so that evil finally loses both physically, in reality, at the battlefield, and so that people feel it convincing in their hearts. Just for everyone who comes to power and runs after Putin to know that justice is stronger than Kremlin's walls. Only our common work can ensure this. Dear friends, we altogether have created a real network of accountability. We appreciate very much the leadership of the Netherlands in promoting the idea of special tribunal for the crime of Russia's aggression. And I'm grateful to all countries and state leaders, international organizations, public leaders, representatives of the legal community who support the global work on investigating Russian war crimes and bringing those guilty to responsibility, bringing everyone who is guilty from political and military leadership of Russia to ordinary perpetrators. And I'm confident that the activity of the International Criminal Court that has issued arrest warrant for Putin and is working on restoring full justice to all those affected by this war, both adults and children, is important for the entire world. Also, we are creating very concrete, systematic tools to compensate the damages caused by this war. Together with many countries and leaders, we cooperate on confiscating Russian assets and profits from them. All these should work for the people whom Putin tried to destroy with this war. Likewise, the register of damages also beginning operating, and it is crucially important that already this year the claims commission and the compensation fund are established as the key elements of the planned compensation mechanism. I urge all of you not to deviate from our common line, the line of justice. And I ask you not to slow down the pace. We have to do everything possible for the defense of justice, so that justice provides real strength to our common security from aggressions and terror. Let the real peace be restored faster, and let everyone who destroys peace be truly afraid of facing trial in The Hague. Thank you for your attention. Thank you all for your support.
One thing is certain, the people who suffer during war, it's always the people. So if you want to talk about justice, regardless of what side you happen to fall on, or where you happen to be born, where you live, if your home gets blown up in an act of war, I'd say you're a victim and you need help. Anybody that has their home blown up or taken away from them, yeah, they could use some help. And the explosions and the fighting continue. Tonight, we're seeing in Belarus that Lukashenko is preparing for war. He says Belarus doesn't want to go to war, but the country continues to hold military drills. It's building up supplies for its troops. And that includes various types of weapons. And he says, don't believe anybody who's saying that Belarus wants to go to war, but he says they are preparing for war. Alexander Lukashenko, the leader of Belarus. He says the country is holding military training, drills, Just being prepared. Because everything is so unstable. And of course, he is on the Russian side of the equation. And this is a game of nerves, of financing, and of information warfare, propaganda, whatever you want to call it. And on the other side of that equation, for balance, I offer you, if I can find it here, it should be here. Maybe I've lost it. Let me take a quick break here while I queue up this clip that we need to continue the broadcast. I will be right back. Don't go away. More ahead right after this.
Maverick News. Fighting for freedom.
The information war is raging. Truth without integrity is worth nothing. Maverick News. Because those who have power and those who seek it must be held accountable.
The world is watching.
Join our family of truth seekers. Donate today and add your voice to the chorus of Maverick Knights. Donate at maverickdonations.com. Truth. Integrity. It's the Maverick way. Maverick News. The world is watching.
So as Lukashenko made those comments about preparing for a war, supporting Putin, Russia, from Belarus, there was a response to that from a small regiment from Belarus, but they fight on the Ukrainian side, Kastus Kalinowski Regiment. There's so much history in that part of the world going back so far, and it is, I know, difficult for many people here in the West to understand the politics which is rooted in history. This regiment recruiting Belarusians from around the world who have left Belarus, now living elsewhere. They are looking to recruit people, and they have been fighting on the Ukrainian side all the way back to like 2014, when you had basically the civil war in parts of Ukraine developing, which is why you saw Zelensky, the Ukrainian government that appeared to be shelling their own people. It was a form of civil war. You had separatists up in, those areas of Ukraine that have now been reclaimed, if you want to look at it that way, by Russia. Anyway, I just offer you this because look at the production value in this video, and you'll get an idea of what I'm talking about when I say propaganda, information warfare. This is basically a commercial of this regiment. It's a recruitment video to get people to come and join them to fight.
Оккупанты, готуйтесь! КГБшники и мусора, готуйтесь! Вы наступные твари! Кожная падла, яка катує наші сім'ї, наших родних! Открийте! Ми хутко прийдемо до вас!
This is a direct response to what Lukashenko said today, this video. I'll read this. Occupiers beware, he says, and the KGB and the militia beware. Your next excuse my language, bastards. Every scumbag who tortures our families, our relatives will be punished. We'll come to you soon, he says. There's a lot of this kind of stuff on both sides. Commercials, promo videos, promotional stuff. Here's another one, less polished, but still produced. And again, this explaining this regiment's desire to repatriate people from around the world.
Белорусы, сегодня у День воли я, Павел дядька Шурмей, бояр полка имя Костолий.
I'll just read you the captions. Belarusians, today, on the day of freedom of Belarus, I, Pavel Didzatska, that's a call sign, Shurumai,
я, Павел дядька Шурмей, вояр
a soldier of the Kastis Kalinowski Regiment, address
полка имя
you.
Костуся Калиновского, звертаюсь до вас.
The fate of free Belarus is being decided here and
Лёс
now.
вольной Белорусі вирішається тут і зараз. І нам належить
And we have a great job to do to really
зробити
unite.
велику працю, по-справному згуртуватися. Велика хваля ім'я.
The huge wave of emigration of recent years has randomly scattered Belarusians all over the world.
Інтеграція апошніх годов рандомно розкидала білорусів по усім світі. Ми не разом.
We are not together, and this is our weakness.
І у гэтым наша слабость. За 2 годы свайго
During the 2 years of its existence, the Kalinowski Regiment proved its fighting ability.
існування полк ім'я Костуся Калиновского доказав свою боєздольність. Кремлівська
The Kremlin puppet Lukashenko, he says, is afraid of us. His owner Putin wants to escalate the
маріонетка
war.
Лукашенка боїться нас. Його господар Путін жадає поширити війну. І у гэты раз
And this time it will not be possible to stay away, he says.
сидеться у Баку не атрымаецца. Война закране кожного.
War affects everyone.
Вось.
This is what Russian imperialism brings to the world.
Несе російський імперіалізм. У тих, хто застав
Those who remained in their homeland have a chance to become meat in Putin's army.
на радзіме, ёсць выбор: стаць гарматным мясам у путінскім войску, ці стаць
Or stand beside us and ensure a decent future for themselves and their children in an independent European country.
разам з намі і забяспечыць сябе і сваім дзецям годную будучыню у незалежнай еўрапейскай Беларусі. Не чакайце.
Don't wait until Putin to make that choice instead for
Пакуль
you.
гэты выбар зробяць за вас. Беларусам за
I would like to say to Belarusians from abroad, you have probably found relative peace and comfort.
межа хочу сказаць: мажліва, вы знайшлі адносны спакой і камфорт, але не радзіму.
But not the motherland. If you, like me, dream that you and your children will be able to live in a free Belarus, now is the time to make a
Калі вы,
decision.
як і я, марыце, каб мы і нашы дзеці маглі жыць у вольнай Беларусі, надыходзіць час дзейнічаць. Заклікаю ўсіх
I urge all true Belarusians to join the Kastis Kalinowski Regiment.
сапраўдных беларусаў далучацца да палка імя Костуся Калиновскага. Лёс Беларусі
Only the Belarusians decide the fate of the Belarusians.
вызначае толькі беларус. З днём волі!
Wish you freedom. Long live Belarus.
Жыве Беларусь!
Two very different perspectives on the war. You can't fully understand a conflict unless you look at all sides and develop an understanding of the various perspectives to get a full picture and understanding. I think it's important. That's why I bring you that perspective and the other perspective, and I'll bring you other perspectives. I'll bring you all the perspectives I can so that we all understand better and get closer to the truth. Hopefully. And you know, there's also the danger sometimes that you're just entertaining lies or propaganda, but I will try to vet the material the best I can and, you know, present information here in proper context as well so that there is a full understanding, which is why I say those videos are produced. They're promotional videos. They are essentially commercials. So keep that in mind when watching that. Ukraine isn't giving up, but they have shifted their approach to this war. As I said about 2 weeks ago, I said they'll need to shift their strategy and probably employ more guerrilla warfare tactics. And that seems to be what is going on. They have been sort of doing surgical strikes here and there while they try to fortify the area around the capital and some other regions. They have had to retreat. And Zelensky has made it very clear that without U.S. aid, soon, Ukraine could fall. So they have shifted their tactics, and we are now seeing, or did see overnight, the biggest, I guess, it's reported as anyway, one of the largest drone attacks on Russia so far. And when I say on Russia, I mean actually in Russia by Ukraine. They launched a large-scale drone attack on Russian territory, and they targeted the third largest refinery and Shahid production facility in Tatarstan. And there have been, multiple reports on this, including from Reuters, the newswire service, which we did take a look at. It says here Ukrainian drones attacked the refinery, which was about 1,300 kilometers from the front line. So they struck this oil refinery. It produces 155,000 barrels, or processes 155,000 barrels of crude oil every single day. And there has been footage there to confirm that a drone did crash into the refinery. And this does also signal, again, a change in strategy, because we are seeing actual attacks inside Russia now. Ukraine really, I think, just deviating from the plan that the United States had approved. They're not really supposed to be doing that. They're not supposed to be using certainly any of the weapons that the West is providing, the United States is providing, to strike inside Russia, because that could, and I think it is, escalating things and potentially drawing other NATO countries into the conflict in like a kinetic way, and they don't want that. Certainly not at this juncture. Or some would say, yes, they do. That's why they're having it done. But I like to deal with facts and not jump to conclusions. I'm not going to sit here and tell you one thing or another. All I'm going to tell you is what I know and what is observable, and I'll share the empirical evidence with you. This refinery was struck, and they were assembling, and they do assemble, these Iranian-designed drones so that they don't have to rely on strictly importing the finished drones from Iran. And these drones have been a real game changer in this war. It's been a different kind of war. Drones playing a real serious role in this conflict. Really, the Ukrainian war, I think, is like the first real drone war. It'll go down in history as such. It's changed warfare for maybe forever, or at least certainly for this chapter in time. Speaking of China, I kind of jumped over this one, but the parliamentary committee heard today that campaign directors in Canada campaign directors for the federal parties back in the 2021 election. They said, they testified today that they were kept in the dark about threats from or threats of Chinese interference in specific ridings and electoral ridings across Canada, even though there was intelligence that had been gleaned as early as July of 2021. But the federal parties, these guys running things for the party, say no, we were not made aware of it. CSIS, Canada's spy agency, did have information on this, but I guess it wasn't shared on that level. And this is an area of real concern for Canadians because it strikes at the very heart of confidence in the electoral system here in Canada. So we'll continue to follow that story for sure. That also ties into what's going on down in the United States. And the comments that we just heard from RFK Jr. Another sad story, totally unrelated to anything else we've talked about really, but dogs have killed an 11-year-old boy in southeast Edmonton. This happened overnight. Police were called to a report of a dog attack. It happened around 82nd Street and 11th Avenue, Southwest, just around 8 p.m. last night. So when first responders arrived, they found a very seriously injured 11-year-old boy attacked by two very large dogs. A release from Edmonton Police has been issued. They're continuing to investigate this. I'm sure we will hear more about it. I do not have information at this point on what kind of dogs these were. But whenever anything of this magnitude, this seriousness happens involving dogs, there is always a strong public response and often calls to ban even certain breeds of canines. So look for fallout from that in the days ahead. Very tragic. It makes you wonder how something like that can happen with an 11-year-old boy and how vicious those dogs must have been, or must be. Back on the sort of the international political front, political correctness or just the correct thing to do, Adidas is, well, it's not even just so much Adidas, it's German FA. They've decided to redesign their font for name and numbers on new Adidas national team football kits after it was discovered that the number 44 looked a whole lot like the Nazi SS symbol. How did they not see that? Here's one of a number of international media reports on this. German football team has announced that the number 4 on its new kit will be redesigned amid claims it bears a striking resemblance to the logo used by the Nazi SS units. Germany's official supplier Adidas had initially banned football fans from customizing the jerseys with 44 on the back. So in a statement given to media, German Football Association, so they're going to have this redesigned. So there's what it looks like. Do you see any resemblance? It does look very much like it. It's really just the number 4, I think, that is in question, so they'll have to redesign that particular number, or maybe to make the font set work, they'll need to redesign the entire font. But yeah, that's why initially they were saying that you can't have the number 4 printed on these jerseys, but they're going to make some changes. So again, I say, political correctness, or is it really the correct thing to do? Let me just look in the chat. What do you guys think? Does that look like something that needs to be addressed? Does that concern anybody in the chat? What do you guys think? Looks like a double S, it says Dave. Welcome to the SIP. Yeah, sorry, 4 is canceled. You can't have 4. No more number 4. What would Bobby Orr do if he was playing hockey today? He couldn't have his famous number 4. But they'll redesign it so they can keep the number 4. They can't ban the number 4. Now, here's an interesting thing I've noticed about freedom groups. Has anyone noticed this? And this is a question nobody has ever really been able to answer for me. Why do you so often see the number 4 used in the names of freedom groups? Does anybody know? If you know, drop me something in the chat. I'm just looking here. Hey, Dragon, how are you tonight? Hello, Jesse LeBlanc. Hello, Maverick. Juicy, how are you, my friend? Fadlaba, Gina, Sandy. Hello, everyone. Great to have everybody here. Does anybody have any idea why? What is it with the number 4? There has to be some significance that I am missing. Somebody help me out with this. I would really, really, really like to know. I'm just very curious about it. It's everywhere. Just think of all the names of different freedom groups, and you will see that the number 4 pops up. Anybody know? Yeah, the number 4. I'm just looking in the chat. Come on. It's this question that I have perplexed others with, and it leaves me perplexed. It's a very perplexing thing. I mean, if you look at like Veterans for Freedom, Stand for Thee, there's a lot of them. The number 4, it's always the number 4. Instead of the word 4, the number 4 is used. All the time. All the time. Danveer, not perplexing, just stupid. Okay. Welcome to the SIB. Says 4 stands for balance and harmony. I have looked up like different meanings. What does 4 stand for? What does it represent? But I've never found a real explanation for why it's used so extensively within freedom groups. There has to be something. There's something to it. There's got to be something to it. I don't know. I'm looking in here in Rumble now. Rosemary Mack says just short for the number 4. You could say that, but no, I don't think so. It's used too often. Leo says 4 is a pagan symbol. Is it? I don't know. I hadn't heard that. 4 is a shortcut for 4. Probably something to it. I'm certain there's something more to it. It's got to be a symbol of something, because if you look at at freedom groups, there are different symbols and things that are used sort of universally through, I would say, the freedom movement and the sovereign citizen movement. You often see lions, a lion. You always see the use of the symbol of the phoenix. I noticed that a lot. These are common things. The number 4 is used commonly. And these represent things that help people identify what these groups are about, not just overtly, but also subconsciously even. When you see the lion, you know that people are talking about a freedom group or a sovereign citizen group or something in that vein. And so, too, is the case with the number 4. I know that there's some commonality that runs like a thread through all of it, and I'd really like to know. I've researched it, and I have not been able to come up with an answer. I just don't know. So somebody out there knows. Somebody. It's a conspiracy! But it's not a theory because it's real. Because I've seen it. I'm telling you. What else do we have? So that story, I've got them all on a list here. Done it. Did that. Man, we're ripping through these stories at a pretty good clip here tonight. And there's so much to talk about. How about space debris falling on somebody's house? Yeah, you know, all that space junk floating around up there? What goes up must come down. Well, space debris from NASA's International Space Station went through the roof of somebody's home in Florida. I am not joking. Just sitting there at home, and then suddenly a piece of space junk comes flying through your roof, lands next to you and damages your house, just about kills you. Take a look. Here it is. So this is from what they're calling a battery pallet that was just released. They just let it go. Off it goes. Just dump it. Dump it into orbit. And they thought that this pallet, see if I can show you a picture of the pallet. It is, well, you have to look at it here on this multi-shot. It's this thing here, this square thing. So that's what it was. They released this thing as space junk, that big square thing, bottom right-hand corner, right here. And they thought it would float around in outer space, in orbit for maybe even a couple of years or something. And that it would then enter the atmosphere, and I guess they thought it would burn up upon re-entry. It weighs 5,800 pounds. Just let it go. But it came back in at such an angle that there wasn't quite enough friction to generate enough heat to completely incinerate this thing. And as a result, you got this piece of junk in the top right-hand corner that survived the burn-up upon re-entry. Hit this guy's house right here. That's not the house. But it hit this guy's house in Florida, sailed right through the roof, and you can see that it punched a hole right through that wood in the floor. How scary is that? You're just sitting there and bam! Kablamo. How scary is that? You know, space junk is becoming a bigger and bigger issue for satellites, for space travel, because so much has been released up there. And I've seen documentaries on this showing that in outer space, if the space station or a satellite is struck by some of these particles or pieces of space junk, it can destroy things because it gets moving at such a speed that if it does collide with something up there, the damage can be catastrophic. So they should really be more careful, I think, about the kind of crap that they pollute the area around Earth with, lest space travel may become not just impractical, maybe even impossible, because it will be too dangerous. I'm sorry, we can't launch your rocket today, Mr. Musk, because once you get into orbit, you're going to get hit by junk. You'll be taken out by a piece of garbage. This house here is in Costa Rica. I just bring this up tonight because earlier, of course, we were talking about the carbon tax, the cost of living, inflation. A lot of people are leaving the country. You know where they're going? Apparently, Costa Rica. Costa Rica! Why? Cost of living is a lot lower in Costa Rica. Here's more shots of that space debris. I'm going to come back to that Costa Rica thingy. Here's a shot inside the house. This is the area where the space junk landed. There's the floor shot. And there's that battery pallet. 5,800 pounds. Hope that doesn't fall on your head. And there's the shot of the ceiling in the house. And enough of that. So yes, Costa Rica. I wanted to talk about Costa Rica because I'm going to be doing some more work on Costa Rica and Canadians moving to Costa Rica. Not just going there for vacations, but actually moving to escape the economic tyranny of Canada in the face of all this inflation that we are being forced to endure. Very serious for people. Really hard for retirees, anybody on a fixed income, anybody on social assistance. Inflation has taken a big chunk out of your life. Anybody that's saved responsibly over time, they're getting hit in the wallet. So I know that, for instance, to rent an apartment in Costa Rica, it costs about 1/3 what it costs to rent an apartment in Ontario. About 1/3, say $1,500 a month in Ontario, it'll cost you the equivalent of about $500 in Costa Rica. And why are we getting all this inflation? Because of money printing, because of all the investment that the federal governments in Canada, the United States, and in Europe are pumping into the electrification of the auto industry. And I've said many times, we better hope and pray that this all pays off. It's vital. If it doesn't pay off, we're going to be left with a big bill and no productive payback on the other side. And it's a huge issue because we are facing, at this time, increasing global competition in North America from automakers in other countries, including like Vietnam and most significantly China. I've mentioned this company before, BYD. And last month, BYD, which stands for Build Your Dreams, this Chinese automaker, posted its biggest sales ever. And they produce electric vehicles. Their total vehicle sales in March of last month exceeded 300,000 units. And that is very strong plug-in electric car sales results. It's their second best on the electric side ever. It's also their best total sales figure ever, including when you combine traditional ICE vehicles and electrics. And so plug-in car sales amounted to 301,631 units last month. I also reported about a week ago that BYD has exceeded, they've surpassed Tesla sales in China by about 30%. They are the number one electric car manufacturer in China, and they are expanding into Europe and Australia, and they have their sights set on North America as well. They produce very affordable cars, starting around $10,000. That makes them a very serious competitor, a very serious threat to the actual future of the auto industry in North America. That's why Donald Trump has warned that if we continue to focus primarily on electric vehicles and push toward getting rid of ICE vehicles altogether, China may eat our lunch, because he says these vehicles, for the most part, are going to be produced in China, and the batteries as well. Even though we're building these huge factories over here to produce vehicles, with the wages that people are demanding over here because of inflation, because of the regulations, the red tape that it takes to get these things built, the government involvement, the lack of efficiency on many fronts compared to what goes on in China, and the economies of scale that they employ as they build out these production facilities in China, we will find ourselves under massive assault economically here in the West. This is why so many people are afraid, I guess, of what's happening with China. And it is something that we absolutely should be taking note of. BYD. Keep your eyes on that. And you know who backs that company? Warren Buffett. So even though it's a Chinese-based automaker, it's global, and Warren Buffett is one of the main investors behind BYD. We'll have more on that in the weeks and months ahead. Stay with me. I'll be right back after this.
Maverick News. The world is watching.
The New World Order. Government overreach. The Great Reset. Mainstream media lies. Now more than ever, independent voices are needed. Donate now at freedomreporters.com. That's freedomreporters.com. Maverick News. The antivirus program for your mind.
And I'm sure that many of you have heard that comedian, actor, Canadian Joe Flaherty has passed away. Part of the SCTV troupe. I grew up watching Joe Flaherty on SCTV on television in Canada, and he has passed away after an illness, according to his family. And so tonight I leave you with this.
Hi everyone, Count Floyd here, reminding you to watch this Saturday night at 11 o'clock for Monster Chiller Horror Theater. We got a scary one for you this week.
Those were the days, those were the before times. And hopefully we'll get those back. I'm just going to take another quick break before we go anywhere, because I want to just check in on what's going on out in Alberta. So hang with me, I'll be right back.
The information war is raging. Truth without integrity is worth nothing. Maverick News. Because those who have power and those who seek it must be held accountable.
The world is watching.
Join our family of truth seekers. Donate today and add your voice to the chorus of Maverick Knights. Donate at maverickdonations.com. Truth. Integrity. It's the Maverick way. Maverick News. The world is watching.
And it looks like we've got everything totally up to date. So police still seem to have vacated the area there on the Trans-Canada Highway at Highway 22. The standoff, in a sense, has ended. Protesters remain on the service road to the side, and I'm sure there will be updates through the evening that I will receive. And if so, if there's anything significant that happens, I will come back on and go live again to keep everyone informed. If there is anything significant, anything of importance, the protesters saying they're going to stay there again overnight tonight. So expect them to be there in the morning. They have been allowed to protest. They are being allowed to stay. And so that is I would say, a victory for democracy. So that's a good thing. And we do have a different government out there, you know. As much as the premier, any government is not supposed to direct police, I think the premier and the government still sets the tone for police. And what we saw today was restraint, I think, on all sides. Tensions were running high, but you had police down there being taunted, honestly, at times, standing in the ditch. Their goal was to prevent the protesters from getting out onto the shoulder of the highway for a variety of reasons. Certainly to protect the infrastructure and make sure that traffic was not impeded today. They were allowed to stay there yesterday and protest, and they did snarl traffic significantly, but they weren't allowed to do that today. The protests, though, did continue all day long. They are still there on the service road. They are still visible to the passersby, and the highway remains open. I know there were some people saying that the highway was shut down by police, but at no time did I honestly see that traffic had actually come to a stop there today at any time as a result of any kind of police barricading or anything like that. Now, maybe police did have some sections blocked off. Maybe they were making people go around. I don't know. But from everything I saw going on, I didn't see at any time the highway shut down. All I saw today, honestly, was a peaceful protest. I didn't see anybody getting out of hand in any way. The police were also restrained and acted, I think, with a level of professionalism that was needed, called for, and as a result, everybody is still safe. And we all live to protest another day, tomorrow, which is a very good thing. So we'll keep our eyes on that, and we'll be back tomorrow. If you are inclined to support the program, you can donate at freedomreporters.com. Make sure you like, share, subscribe as well. Please consider subscribing over on Rumble. You can also donate at maverickdonations.com. That's the Give, Send, Go page. And we certainly appreciate the support that we have had. You are the only thing that keeps this operation up and running. You are the only source of revenue because we are demonetized. It's only donations that pay the bills around here. So greatly, 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 greatly appreciated. And with that being said, I will return tomorrow with more top news here on the Maverick News Channel. Appreciate you guys hanging out. It's always a privilege. Catch you on the flip side.
This has been a Maverick Multimedia production.